Hi everyone, I'm Stony Albright, and I want to chat to you today about using cyber civics lessons to adapt to a Montessori learning environment. So hopefully you've had a chance to read the blog that went up a few weeks ago regarding the ways in which cyber civics really is ideal for the Montessori classroom. And if you haven't read that yet, I encourage you to do that. And now I want to show you some practical tips for ways in which, if I'm trying to adapt something specifically to a Montessori learning environment, how I would do that. So the great thing about cyber civics lessons, and you can see here, I'm on where the teacher portal where the lessons exist. So as I'm thinking about introducing these topics to my students, a variety of things might push me to bring up certain topics. In addition, the cyber civics curriculum is really laid out in a step-by-step way, builds on each other over time. So you have a couple of options when thinking about what cyber civics topics to bring to your students any given time. And one option is to go through the curriculum and kind of introduce some of the topics bit by bit and then adapt each lesson bit by bit as you go through. The other option, and one that really does work well for a true Montessori middle school or junior high classroom, is when things come up in your class, to use those opportunities as learning opportunities and a chance for students to really research and dig into these very specific topics that in that moment mean a lot to them. For example, up here I have one of our lessons in the 6th grade curriculum all about cyberbullying. This lesson, as you can see, is number 16 right there. So a lot of other lessons have come before this, you even get to this one. But we know that this is a common thing, a conversation, whether it's something happening in the school or the class, that will generally come up in 6th grade. So at any given time, this could be something that the teacher brings forward in response to something that's happening in the class. And just go through the lesson a little bit here and show you kind of how I look at it. So what's great about the cyber civics lessons is that they're already set up with all of the objectives and the skill building practices put right into the lesson. So I use this information to give myself some education. What is cyberbullying? What is digital drama? I'm kind of taking that in as the teacher. And then for the student, I might be looking at the standards here and be thinking about, okay, this particular student needs an ELA project, perhaps, or a language arts project, perhaps, or maybe needs to do something civics related, civics minded, or with social studies in some way. And so if a student is either expressing interest or this is coming up in the class, or I've given out kind of basic options for cyber civics at this time, then I would go on to the next learning objectives. So those of you who teach in a Montessori classroom regularly know that when you're creating these individualized lesson plans for students, these are the things you're putting on there already. You're putting a general overview of what you're trying to target with that student, where that student is, and then their learning objectives. And so those are already built in here. Of course, you might adapt some of them to a specific student in mind or a small group, but this really is just kind of the general already laid out for you. Now here's where it gets really interesting. So if I was teaching this lesson to a standard classroom, which is generally how people deliver these lessons, I would have a big group discussion. I would open it up with, here's some, let's think about this word. What do you know about that? And it says right there, prompts you, set up this lesson by asking students if they have ever been bullied. So in the Montessori classroom, what we try to do is step away from the judgment aspect and just present the facts, just present the material, and then see what the student takes from that. So that's the point where I maybe don't do the introducing the lesson the same. Perhaps if something bubbled up in the class, I might have a small group discuss that with me. But more likely, I would instead skip right to this part, which is the terminology. So cyberbullying, online, intentional, repeated, harmful, the aspects of cyberbullying, what are they? So this actionable and truthful information is the place that I would start with a Montessori lesson for a middle schooler. I would take this information and then ask the students, okay, if there was an incident that bubbled up, what was the experience that you had? And, to kind of prompt them into, in what way would you like to learn more about cyberbullying and what that is? So in a traditional classroom model, the lesson revolves around these imaginary scenarios and the students understanding how to differentiate between digital drama, which is listed right here, and cyberbullying. In the Montessori model, perhaps a better or different approach in that model would be to have a student research, discover, find an actual situation of cyberbullying and perhaps an actual situation of digital drama. It could even relate back to the situation that they were just experiencing in the classroom. Then they could choose to create some kind of a project. They could do a paper, a written paper if ELA is the focus or something that the student needs to work on. It could be through that platform. It could also be research discovery to do a presentation. And those of you that are familiar with Waldorf education or with Montessori education, know that presentations are a really big part of how students take ownership in what they've learned and to impart that to other students. On the presentation note, in a Montessori classroom, an amazing opportunity as well is to take all of the topics in any one year and divide them up among students. Perhaps the students could choose a topic that they were interested in out of the list. If you look on my side over here, you can see all of the lessons that we have, and it goes up to about 23. So different topics would be privacy, cyberbullying, digital drama, ethical thinking, digital reputation, citizenship, becoming a detective, all of those things. But you can kind of chunk these specific topics into smaller ones, and each student in the class could be responsible for presenting that information or teaching that information to their classmates. And that is an amazing way to bring this curriculum to a Montessori learning environment. For one thing, due to the mixed age nature, some students may gravitate more towards the really intense topics like cyberbullying, and other students may really be thinking about it in more simple ways or younger ways, thinking about community and how to build community and how to be in community. So it just gives you a lot of opportunities to let the students be exactly where they are maturity-wise and then use the curriculum that's already there. So in the same way that I'm showing you with this lesson, students could really choose any of the lessons. You, of course, would give them the topics, not the actual lesson plan as it's written here. And then do some research and think of a way to present the best information on that with you as a guide. Now, the teacher, you will have a lot of opportunities to get the best information because that's what Cyber Civics has already done for you. They're putting in kind of the best practices, the science behind it, the links to find more information, the videos that will teach you more. And sometimes those are helpful to point kids to those resources, and other times it's better to let them find those themselves. So again, as we all know, in a Montessori classroom, you may have as many lesson plans as you have students. And that's the amazing thing about the Cyber Civics curriculum is it really can be adapted for that very individual learning environment. So back to the cyberbullying lesson. After I've given my students the topics of the terms, cyberbullying, and then, of course, talking about digital drama, then I will probably give them the project planner worksheet, which is part of our Montessori Assets bundle. And if you don't have that, feel free to reach out to anyone on the Cyber Civics team to find out how you can get some copies of those. But they're great organizational planners for those of us who are working in a Montessori classroom and want kind of an easy thing that can be adapted to some of these lessons. Rubrics, project planners other types of planners, and just ways to kind of set up and organize work of the student. So I would give the student the project planner, and they would sort of decide, all right, how is the best way for me to talk about and look at cyberbullying versus digital drama? How could I best present that or show what I've learned to the teacher? And then what else do I want to do about that? Am I interested in this topic? Do I want to take it a step further? I've had students really take on civic projects, like create social media awareness around cyberbullying in their classroom or their school. I've seen kids join with other students around the world and for sure the country to garner attention around some of these ways that we can be what we call upstanders. And all of those things are options for kids through this project. I think it's very exciting when I see kids really take up this material and just feel so passionate about how to be the person who understands and can stop cyberbullying and be able to talk about it properly. And so this lesson is a springboard for that. And of course, you want the students to be taking that initiative in the way that feels really natural to them. Some other things in here in this lesson, the Venn diagram is super helpful. That might be something I would prompt with the student and perhaps not give to them, but see if they're interested in kind of developing that. There are other versions online that they might find in their research. And then you can see in the lesson here too, it says, what is the goal? Right? All good Montessori teachers are looking at the end goal. And the end goal really is the place that the students end up taking these lessons. As I said before, here's some fictional stories, examples where in a traditional model classroom or a Waldorf classroom, students might go through these and think about the scenarios and try to decide. This is also something a Montessori student might take up as a way to explain them. I've had students before write fictional scenarios and using their ELA tools to produce something that they could present somewhere or show at in their class or do with their group. So I probably wouldn't use this exact setup with Montessori. I would really ask the students to and kind of follow their lead on that, but oftentimes they get to this place even if I don't bring it. Okay, so that's a little bit about how I would use cyber civics lessons in a Montessori classroom. If you have any questions or you want to talk more about what that means to adapt, as those of us who have been in Montessori classrooms know, it's all about the adaptation to the individual and their needs in the moment. And so the great thing about the cyber civics curriculum in connection with Montessori education is that it's all there for you. It's just about looking at it through the lens of that particular individual. All the best to you as you start to look at this through those Montessori lenses, and please don't hesitate to leave a comment or reach out with any questions.